My name is Susan Chittooran, and I'm with the Patient Affairs staff at FDA. I'm a social worker by background, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about FDA and how we work with patients. So I hope that, in some of these slides, if you have questions, feel free to ask after the presentation, or you can reach out to me afterwards. So I'm just going to go through here an overview of a little bit about why FDA wants to hear from patients, and not just patients, but caregivers as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about my office and some of the initiatives that we do, talk a little bit about other initiatives at FDA where folks in our other medical product centers also talk to patients and caregivers, and then of course I understand that there's a Q&A at the end. So why is the patient voice important? Well, a couple of reasons. You are the ones that have the real world examples of living with and managing a disease and condition. These are things that we at FDA won't understand from a personal point of view. So what you have to share with us is incredibly valuable. There are things that we won't know unless you tell us. And so because of that, FDA is a public health institution. We are here for patients, for caregivers, and so we rely very strongly on your feedback and what you have to say, whether it's about products that are already approved or what your preferences are about products that might be developed in the future. So I won't go through this because I know this is a really busy slide, but I put this up here just because I want to show you that FDA has had a history of working with patients throughout the last 3 or 4 decades here. So just towards the bottom, what we consider when patient engagement really kind of started at FDA was in the 80s with the HIV/AIDS crisis. It was at that point that FDA, I'm going to actually hold on to this because they keep turning. It was in the 80s when we started hearing from patients that there were either no treatments or the treatments that were existing weren't working. So it was at that point where FDA really started formally trying to work with patients and caregivers. In the 90s, in 1991, we developed a program called the Patient Representative Program, which I'll talk about in some of my upcoming slides. And then if you look here in 2012, you'll see that that's when a lot of our patient engagement initiatives really kind of took off. Since then, we started the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative. My office was launched in late 2017, so we're about 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years old. And we started doing our listening sessions, and all of the other medical product centers at FDA started their own patient engagement initiatives, which I'll talk about in some of our upcoming slides. So a little bit about my office and what we do. So before I get into that, I have this graphic here kind of representing my office and sort of how we work with the other medical product centers at FDA. So my office, patient affairs staff, falls within the Office of the Commissioner. That's in the gray triangle there, the gray wedge. We work closely with 3 of our medical product centers, which is the Center for Biologics, the Center for Drugs, and the Center for Devices. We have a lot of acronyms, so I'm trying to spare you from all of the acronyms. I also do want to mention that there are other offices within the FDA, such as our Center for Foods, but we work with these 3 primarily because they are medical product centers. All of these centers have staff that focus on patient engagement issues, and my office works to keep those offices coordinated because there are oftentimes issues that are not specifically a drug issue. There might be an issue where a patient wants to talk to somebody who deals with devices, but also drugs. So we try to make sure that everybody is connected and sort of on the same page. A little bit about our office. Again, we're in the Office of the Commissioner. We work with the 3 medical product centers. How do we do this? We work through public-private collaborations and partnerships, which I'll talk about on some of the future slides. We do cross-cutting programs and initiatives, so again, stuff that involves multiple product centers at FDA, and we are working to try and improve the way that we're communicating with patients and caregivers externally, so social media, our website, etc. These are a couple of different things that my office manages, so and I'll go through these more in detail, but we work with our European counterparts, EMA. We run the Patient Engagement Collaborative. We have rare disease listening sessions, and then the FDA Patient Council is an internal working group of FDA folks that work with patients and caregivers, and that's just a way to keep us all coordinated and understand what each of our centers are doing. So our patient engagement cluster is something that we do in partnership with the EMA. So the EMA is the European Medicines Agency. It's basically the European version of the FDA. And people often ask us, well, sometimes there's products that are approved in Europe, and there are things that I can't get in the US. And so people often ask us, well, how do we work with these groups? Well, we have the cluster that we've established here. This is one way that we're kind of learning best practices from each other. We're information sharing so that we're aware of the things that they're doing there, and they want to learn from us as well. We meet usually quarterly by phone or the web. And so we typically talk about things that are upcoming or things that we have done in the past. Our Patient Engagement Collaborative is another, or PEC, as we like to call it for short, is an example of a public-private partnership that we do in conjunction with CITI, which stands for the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative. It's a small group of folks. You can see the photo here. Those folks represent people from individual patient groups as well as just individual patients that are not affiliated with any kind of organization at all. Right now, the group is helping us to better understand what we at FDA can do better about working with patients in the community. So one of the things that they're working on right now is helping us kind of change our website to make it a little bit more patient-friendly. We've heard over and over again that our website is very difficult to navigate and it's just confusing. So we're trying to learn directly from patients, like what might be better for you to understand, or what can we do to fix that to the extent possible, while also maintaining some of that information on there. So they're helping us with that right now. This is a little bit about what I talked about. We are trying to improve our website. We also have recently launched a video series for patients. So far, there's only a couple of videos in that we've talked a little bit about some of the things I'm actually talking about today. We've talked about natural history studies. We're talking a little bit about expanded access. And if there are topics that you would like to learn more about at FDA and we don't have a way for you to understand that, feel free to suggest that to us. We want to be able to make resources for patients and caregivers so that you're able to understand and get information in the way that you need. So one of the things that we recently launched a little less than a year ago is a new portal to request meetings and submit questions to the FDA. So typically what we have heard is that when people are trying to connect with the FDA, they really don't know where to begin. They don't know how to submit a meeting request. They don't even know necessarily how to get their question answered. And so what we've done as a result is, one, we've created My Office. We're supposed to kind of do that and be sort of the front door for folks. But if you don't reach out to us, one thing that you can do is go to our Patients Ask FDA portal. And so that's just a screenshot of what it would look like. This is something that's designed for patients, caregivers, and advocates. It's not designed for industry. And what you can do is you can select whether you're a patient or you're an advocate, and you can click whether you want to submit a question or is it a meeting request. And then you can fill in some of the other information, like what's the disease that you're talking about, or you can specify the question. And when you do that, then your question or meeting request will get routed to the appropriate office so that they can answer your question or respond to your meeting request. One of the things that we have done out in my office, this is a little bit over a year and a half old, is that we started doing patient and caregiver listening sessions. So listening sessions overall are not new to the FDA. My office piloted a sort of a program to kind of help streamline the process for requesting listening sessions. Now that we started doing that in the rare disease space, and we are considering kind of launching that and branching out to other diseases that are not rare as well. So what are listening sessions? And I know it says rare diseases at the top, but I just want to mention that if you ever want to do a listening session, you can absolutely request one through the portal that I had mentioned previously. So what are listening sessions? So these are basically typically 1 to 2 hour meetings. They can be done in person, they can be done on the phone, they can be a combination of the two. And they're meant to be sort of a pathway between patients and caregivers and the FDA. So these are not open to the public. We don't live stream these or anything like that. It's not open to industry. It's basically to help us understand what it's like to live with or manage a disease from your perspective as a patient. And this is just sort of one of the ways that you can connect with the FDA. There's a couple different ways to do so, but listening sessions are one of those. So this will help us to better understand what kind of symptoms you're experiencing, what kind of preferences do you have in treatments, how does it impact you in your daily life, and things that FDA should be considering when looking at products that might be coming down the road in the future. So there's 2 types of listening sessions. One is when my colleagues at FDA say to us, hey, we want to learn a little bit more about X disease or a Y disease. And then we will work with various patient communities to try and figure out who they want to speak to and who they want to get input from. The other way that we do listening sessions is when patient advocacy organizations say, well, we want to talk to the FDA, we want to share our perspective with you. And so patient groups can actually request one of these directly from us. The website is there at the bottom, so you can actually request it through that portal that I mentioned earlier. We also have a listening session website as well, so you can actually go on there and read a little bit about listening sessions and what's been talked about in previous sessions. And this is just a long list of ones that we've done since we launched our pilot in late 2018. Right now we are getting requests. Right now we're getting requests pretty regularly. We try to do 1 or 2 a month. Of course, that depends on the needs of the patient groups as well as availability, whether who's able to come in or who, basically when it's scheduled. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about other initiatives across the FDA. So my office, again, is not the only one that does patient-type activities. So we have a FDA patient representative program. It's managed out of the Office of the Commissioner as well. This is a program where there are over 200 people that are members of this program, and they represent over 300 different diseases or conditions or experiences using types of medical products. These folks are people that sit on advisory committee meetings. So when there are issues at FDA where we are trying to either discuss maybe a product that is being approved or some kind of safety issue or something where we want to get outside input at the FDA, we will often have somebody on in those meetings who represents the patient voice. So that can be a patient or a caregiver. And so where do we get those patients and caregivers from? We get them from this program. So if this is something that you're interested in, I can absolutely connect you with our director of that program. They do go through a conflict of interest screening because they are considered special government employees. Our Center for Drugs and our Center for Biologics, so CBER and CDER, have their own initiatives as well that focus on patient issues related to drugs and biologics. So I've just kind of listed some of these up here. Most people have heard, or you may have heard of the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative. Those are similar to our listening sessions, but those are public meetings. And also patients can request those, FDA can request those as well. They have launched a guidance series about that initiative. CDER and CBER as well have staff there that focus on patient issues. And just like my office has meetings and workshops and activities and listening sessions, CDER and CBER also have similar types of meetings as well. CDRH is our Center for Devices. So one of the things that they did recently, they launched the Patient Engagement Advisory Committee. That image there is the topic that they talked about last fall. in their meeting. So this is an advisory committee where everybody on the committee is a patient or a caregiver. They also have launched a guidance document as a result of one of their meetings that they had in 2017. They also have individual meetings and workshops as well, specific to medical devices. So I just put this screen up here in case anybody wants to get email addresses for anybody. Sometimes it's easier to just take a photo, honestly. As I mentioned, a lot of these different offices have their own initiatives. So this is just making sure that you reach the correct people. And that is me and the other folks on my team. We're a small team of 5 people. And if there's anything that you have questions about or want me to reiterate, you can contact us directly. We're also on Twitter. And if you forgot any of the things that I mentioned, just email us and we will get you to the right place. So thank you very much.